A human was hired to guard alien animals, but discovered the animals were starving alien women. Ethan Cole stepped off the rusty cargo ship with a dry throat and an empty stomach. His boots touched the metal floor of the alien docking bay, echoing like hollow drums. He had been drifting for weeks, taking small jobs, always running from debt and hunger. The last of his money had gone to buy this ticket. Now standing under the harsh lights of the alien colony, he had nothing left except hope. Above him, glowing banners flashed in 3 languages. In human English, the words were bold and tempting. Strong hands wanted, high pay for plow work. The sign showed pictures of golden fields under twin suns. To Ethan, it looked like salvation. Farming was honest work. Hard, yes, but safe. A man could survive by pushing soil and guiding machines. He had grown up on earth farms. His hands knew the rhythm of the plow. The air smelled strange burnt metal and sour fruit. Aliens passed by, tall figures with glassy eyes whispering in low voices. Their heads turned toward Ethan often. Some smirked, some shook their heads, as if they knew a secret he did not, but Ethan ignored them. Hunger was louder than their stares. At the far end of the bay was a booth, glowing red. Behind the counter sat a recruiter. The alien skin was pale gray, stretched tight like leather. His smile showed too many teeth, long and needle-sharp. His black eyes did not blink as Ethan approached. "You are human," the recruiter said in accented English. His voice was smooth but cold. "Yes," Ethan answered. "I saw the sign. I know how to plow fields. I can work hard." The recruiter leaned forward, studying Ethan's calloused hands. Then he chuckled. "Good, very good, you will do." He slid a black sheet of paper across the counter. Words shimmered on it in glowing ink. Ethan frowned. He could read a little of the alien script, but most of it meant nothing to him. The English translation below was clumsy. Still, one word repeated again and again: fertility. Ethan's brow creased. "This isn't about soil, about crops?" The recruiter's sharp smile widened. "You will plow, that is what matters. The job pays, the job feeds. You want food, human." Ethan's stomach twisted with hunger. He wanted food. More than questions. The pay listed at the bottom was more than he had ever seen in months. Enough to eat, enough to buy new clothes, maybe even enough to get off this dying colony. He swallowed his doubts and signed. The glowing ink burned into the page, sealing the contract. The recruiter's long fingers snatched it away, almost too quickly, as if afraid Ethan would change his mind. "Good," the alien hissed. "Transport comes soon. You will ride to the farms. Work begins tonight." Ethan stepped back, a chill crawling up his neck. Something in the alien's voice made the word farm sound wrong. Not fields of grain, not open skies. Something else. As he waited, Ethan studied the docking bay. A group of aliens passed, dragging heavy cages on wheeled carts. The cages were covered with thick black cloth, but something moved inside something. Alive. The carts rattled past him, and Ethan heard a faint sound. Not an animal's cry, not a beast's roar, but a voice. A whisper. It was soft, almost human. A woman's voice. Ethan's chest tightened. He turned, but the guards pushed the carts through a gate, slamming it shut behind them. The recruiter waved him away, pointing toward a waiting crawler vehicle. "Go." To the farms. The crawler rumbled like thunder. Ethan climbed aboard with other workers, thin, tired men from different worlds. None of them spoke. Their eyes were hollow, their faces pale. Some kept glancing at him, then looking away quickly, as if ashamed. The vehicle jerked forward, leaving the bright bay behind. Outside the windows, Ethan saw the land stretch wide under 2 suns. He expected green fields, rows of crops, maybe fruit orchards. But what he saw was barren. The soil was cracked and red, dry like blood. No crops, no trackers. Only tall fences, watchtowers, and walls of black stone. This did not look like a farm. It looked like a prison. Ethan's hands curled into fists. His gut told him something was wrong, but the driver kept smiling, showing broken teeth. Don't worry, human. Soon you will learn. The fields are waiting for you. The crawler roared toward the stone fortress. The sun dipped lower, painting the sky in fire. The walls rose higher as they approached, crowned with spikes and glowing lights. Ethan's heart pounded faster with every mile. He had signed the contract. He had agreed to plow. But as the fortress gates opened with a scream of iron, Ethan knew whatever waited inside was no farm. And whatever plow work meant, it was not what he thought. The crawler roared across the barren land, its wheels grinding against the red dirt. Ethan sat inside with the other workers, the metal bench shaking under every bump. The air was hot and dry, like fire pressing against his throat. He wanted to believe this was still about farming, but the world outside the window told a different story. No green fields, no orchards. Only cracked soil, dead trees, and fences stretching to the horizon. Towers with glowing lights stood in the distance, and in those towers, shadows moved guards with long weapons, watching the land like hunters waiting for prey. The other workers said nothing. A thin alien with pale blue skin sat across from Ethan, his eyes sunken, lips cracked. When Ethan tried to speak, "What kind of farm is this?" the alien only lowered his gaze and shook his head, as if words were dangerous. Ethan clenched his fists. Every second in this crawler pushed his doubts deeper into his chest. He remembered the cages in the docking bay, the cloth-covered cages that had whispered. That voice had not been a dream. The driver was a fat alien with scaly cheeks and a cruel grin. His eyes stayed on the road, but now and then, he looked back at the workers and laughed under his breath. Ethan finally asked, "What's inside the farms?" The driver smirked. "Soil, fertility, you will see. Humans are good at such things." The words twisted in Ethan's mind. Fertility, soil, plowing, they no longer felt like farming words. They felt like a trap. The crawler slowed as they reached the first checkpoint. A gate of black steel rose high, with glowing wires crackling across its frame. Guards in armor stood waiting, their faces hidden by masks. They carried weapons that hummed with blue energy. The driver handed them a list. One guard scanned Ethan with a beam of light, pausing when the device beeped. "Human," the guard muttered. His voice was cold and full of amusement. "Perfect." The gate groaned open. The crawler rolled through. Inside, the land looked even worse. The ground was not soil, it was stone cracked open like old scars. No plants, no seeds, nothing alive. Yet the walls were strong, the cages locked, the towers sharp. Ethan's chest tightened. This was no farm. This was a fortress. The driver chuckled again. "Here it is. The fields, beautiful, yes?" Ethan stared at the black towers. "This isn't farming. This is prison." The driver's grin widened. "Prison?" "No, paradise, for you, human." The crawler stopped before a tall gate carved with strange symbols. The workers were pushed out, one by one. Guards lined them up, scanning them again, as if checking animals for sale. Ethan stood tall, though his heart pounded. His eyes caught movement. Another cart rolled by, carrying cages covered in black cloth. One corner of the cloth lifted in the wind, just for a moment. Ethan's breath froze. Inside the cage was not an animal, it was a woman. Tall, with silver skin and bright green eyes. Her wrists were chained, her lips pressed together in silent anger. She locked eyes with Ethan before the guard slapped the cage, forcing the cloth back down. Ethan's stomach turned. The word fertility stabbed through his mind again. He finally understood what kind of plow work this was, but he kept his face blank. If he showed fear, the guards would notice. If he asked questions, the wrong ears would hear. The overseer appeared then, a towering alien with red armor, his face a cruel mask of scars. He looked over the line of workers, his eyes stopping on Ethan. "Human," the overseer said slowly, as if tasting the word. "Your kind is rare here, strong, resilient, you will serve well." Ethan met his stare, but said nothing. The overseer laughed, a sound like breaking bones. "Take them inside. Tonight, the human begins his work." The gates opened. Ivan and the others were pushed into the fortress. Inside, the air changed. It was cooler, heavier, filled with whispers and low cries. The path led between rows of stone buildings, each door sealed with locks. Chains clinked in the distance. Shadows moved. Behind barred windows, figures with glowing eyes, watching in silence. Ethan's blood ran cold. This was no farm. This was a breeding ground. A place where lives were traded, controlled, and used. The overseer walked beside him, grinning. "Do not fear, human. You signed the contract. You belong here now. You will plow our fields. You will feed our future." Ethan clenched his jaw. He had made a mistake, a terrible mistake. But deep inside, anger began to burn hotter than fear. If this was the field they wanted him to plow, then maybe it was time to plant something they would never expect. Rebellion. The fortress smelled of smoke, metal, and something worse, fear. Ethan walked with the line of workers through narrow corridors lit by blue torches. Chains rattled on the walls. Strange whispers echoed in the air, voices carried through iron. Doors. Every step made his chest heavy. He had signed a contract, but this place was not farming. This was something darker. Guards pushed them into a large chamber. The floor was smooth black stone, and cages lined the walls. Some cages were covered, others open. Inside were tall alien women, strong, beautiful, and furious. Their skin shimmered in shades of silver, blue, and gold. Their eyes glowed in the dim light. They were not free. Iron collars locked around their necks. Their wrists were bound with glowing chains. And yet, even in chains, they did not look weak. They looked like warriors forced into silence. Ethan froze. The truth was no longer hidden. These were the fields. And these women were the soil. A guard struck Ethan's back with a staff. "Move, human." Ethan stumbled forward, his jaw clenched. He would not show fear. Not here. The overseer from the gates entered the chamber. His armor glowed faint red as he walked. His scarred face twisted into a cruel smile when his eyes found Ethan. "Workers," the overseer said, his voice echoing across the chamber. "You came to plow our soil. You came to make life grow." He raised a long hand toward the cages. The alien women inside turned their faces away in anger. "These are the fertile ones," the overseer continued. "Our warriors die in war. Our empire needs more blood, more children, more heirs. You will serve that purpose." The words hit Ethan like a hammer. His hands curled into fists. This was not farming. This was breeding. One of the workers, a thin alien with pale skin, dropped to his knees. His voice shook. "Please, overseer, I cannot." The overseer snapped his fingers. A chain tightened around one of the women's throats. She gasped, clawing at her collar as her body bent in pain. The worker screamed. Stop, I'll do it." The overseer smiled, releasing the chain. The woman fell to her knees, coughing but alive. "Refusal," the overseer said coldly, "brings punishment. Not for you. For them." Ethan's chest burned with anger. This was no choice. This was a trap. If he resisted, the women would suffer. If he obeyed, he would become part of their prison. The overseer walked up to Ethan. His eyes glittered with cruel amusement. "And you, human, your kind is rare here. Humans are strong, resilient. You will give us much." Ethan stared into the overseer's scarred face and said nothing. But inside, he was already making a promise. He would not be their tool. From the far side of the chamber, a voice whispered, soft, broken. Human ears almost missed it. "Help us." Ethan turned. In the shadows of a cage, a woman with silver skin and dark scars on her arms was staring at him. Her eyes glowed green like fire. She whispered again, lips barely moving. "Human heart, strong, not like theirs." The guard noticed and slammed his staff against the bars, making her flinch. But her gaze never left Ethan. Something passed between them in that moment, an understanding. A spark. The overseer clapped his hands. "Enough talk. Prepare the human. Tonight he begins his duty." Chains clinked. Guards moved closer. Ethan's mind raced. He could play along, pretend to bend, wait for the right moment. Or he could resist now and bring punishment to the women. Either way, he could not stay silent. He forced himself to nod once, slowly. The overseer grinned, pleased with his obedience. But inside Ethan's chest, a different seed was planted. Not of obedience, not of breeding, but of rebellion. As the guards led him deeper into the fortress, past locked doors and crying voices, Ethan repeated the promise in his mind. "I came to plow fields. They tricked me. Now I will plow their empire into the ground." The fortress lights dimmed as night fell outside. The gates closed, sealing him in. The world believed he was just another desperate man trapped by a cruel contract. But Ethan Cole was more than that. And soon, the empire would learn what it meant to give a human a job he never wanted. The iron door slammed shut behind Ethan. The chamber was smaller now, darker. A single torch burned on the wall, throwing long shadows across the floor. Guards stood on either side, their weapons humming softly. Chains hung from the ceiling like cruel vines. In the center of the room stood one cage. Inside sat a woman with golden skin and silver hair. Her eyes glowed faint blue in the dim light. She was tall, proud, but her wrists were bound and her ankles locked with heavy chains. Overseer's voice echoed through the chamber. "Human, this is your first duty. Take her, plow the field." Ethan froze, his jaw clenched, his heart hammering in his chest. He had heard the truth in part 3, but now it stood in front of him, alive and breathing. This was not soil, not farming. This was slavery. The woman inside the cage stared at him. Not with fear, not with shame, but with hate. Her eyes burned as if they could cut through his soul. "Do it," the overseer ordered. Ethan's throat was dry. He shook his head. "No." The overseer tilted his scarred face, smiling like a wolf. "No? I signed for work," Ethan said, his voice low but steady. "This is not work. This is—" He stopped himself, breathing hard. "I won't." The overseer laughed, a sound sharp as broken glass. "You think you have choice, human. You do not." He raised his hand. The collar around the woman's neck glowed red. She gasped, her body arching as the chain sent fire through her veins. Her scream filled the chamber, echoing against the walls. Ethan's stomach twisted. "Stop it." "Then obey," the overseer hissed. The glow dimmed. The woman fell to her knees, coughing, her eyes still locked on Ethan. Her hatred had changed. Not gone, just mixed with something else. Something sharper. A question. Would he resist again? Ethan's fists trembled. "You want me to break?" "But I won't." The overseer's grin widened. "Stubborn. Good. That makes stronger seed." He raised his hand again. The chain sparked. Another cry tore from the woman's throat. She collapsed, her hair falling across her face. Ethan's chest burned with helpless rage. He wanted to grab the overseer's throat, to smash his scarred face against the wall. But guards stood ready, weapons humming, waiting for any move. The overseer lowered his hand again. The woman breathed raggedly, her body shaking. Yet her eyes still glowed, still fixed on Ethan. "You refuse," the overseer said slowly. And when you refuse, they suffer. This is the truth of our fields. You do not hold power here. They do not hold power here, only the Empire does." He leaned closer, his scarred lips curling into a cruel smile. "But perhaps even a human can learn. You will plow, or you will watch them die, one by one." Ethan's body was stiff as stone. His voice was low, quiet, but filled with fire. "Then watch me." The overseer studied him for a long moment, then laughed again, louder this time, shaking the chamber. "So brave, so foolish. We will break you, human. We break everyone." The guards dragged Ethan back. The iron door slammed shut. The last thing he saw was the golden-skinned woman in the cage, her lips parting as if to whisper something. The crack of the closing door, he thought he heard it. "Don't break." They threw him into a dark cell. Chains rattled on the walls. Rats scurried across the floor. He sat on the cold stone, his hands gripping his knees, his head heavy with anger. They wanted him to become a tool. They wanted him to choose between his soul and the suffering of the women. But Ethan knew one truth. If he gave in, if he obeyed, then he would be no different than the monsters who built this fortress. He could not fight yet, not here, not now. But he could wait. He could learn, and when the time came, he would not plow their fields. He would burn them. That night, as the guards passed his cell, Ethan heard soft footsteps. A shadow moved outside his bars. It was the scarred woman from before, the one with green eyes who had whispered to him earlier. Somehow she was free for a moment, or maybe the guards had grown careless. She pressed her hands against the bars and whispered again, her voice like wind in the dark. "Human, you are different. You resist. Do not stop, even if we suffer. Do not stop. One day, chains break. One day we rise." Ethan leaned closer, his voice barely a breath. "Then I'll fight with you." Her eyes burned brighter, and she vanished into the shadows as quickly as she came. Ethan sat back against the wall, his chest filled with something new. Not only anger, not only pain, but hope. And hope, in a place like this, was the most dangerous weapon of all. The next morning, the guards dragged Ethan from his cell. His body was stiff from the cold stone floor, but his eyes were sharp, awake. He had not slept much. The whisper of the green-eyed woman still echoed in his head. "Do not stop. One day." Chains break. The overseer waited in the chamber again, standing tall with his red armor glowing faintly. He smirked as Ethan was shoved forward. "Human, a knight in chains should have taught you respect. Now you will do as ordered." Ethan did not answer. He lowered his head, shoulders bent as if beaten. Let them believe he was weak. Let them believe the fire was gone. Inside, the fire burned brighter. The guards brought out 3 women this time. They were chained together, their eyes sharp, their faces hard with pride. The overseer pointed at Ethan. "Begin." Ethan lifted his head. Slowly, the women stared at him, expecting the worst. But when the guards weren't looking, Ethan gave the smallest shake of his head, a secret signal. "No, not me. Not now." Their eyes widened for just a heartbeat. Then they looked away, hiding their surprise. The overseer watched carefully. "Why? Do you hesitate, human?" Ethan forced his voice to sound flat. "It is strange. I am human. I need time." The overseer chuckled darkly. "You will get used to it. All do." He waved his hand, and the guards yanked Ethan back into the line of workers. The women were dragged away, but before the last one disappeared, she turned her head. Her eyes found Ethan's. In that brief moment, she whispered a word so soft it was almost lost. "Hope." Days passed. Ethan pretended to obey. He walked when they told him to walk. He ate the scraps they gave. He bent his head when the overseer spoke. But every night, when the guards grew lazy and the fortress quiet, he searched. He studied the locks on the doors, the timing of the patrols, the way the chains hummed before they tightened. He noticed small details others missed. One guard who always scratched his neck before turning left. Another who always fell half asleep. Near the south tower. He remembered every movement. And in secret moments, he found the women again. The green-eyed woman came first, slipping into the shadows near his cell. She did not give her name, not yet. Names were dangerous here. But she spoke in broken English, learned from scraps of overheard human speech. You, strong. You, wait, too. Ethan leaned close to the bars, whispering back, "You're warriors, aren't you?" She nodded once. "Taken in war, used here, many years." Her voice shook with anger, but her eyes glowed with pride. Another night. The golden-skinned woman he had first refused appeared. Her chains rattled softly, but her steps were silent. She whispered through the bars, her voice low and steady. "They call you farmer. But you are no farmer. You are a weapon." Ethan's lips curved in the faintest smile. "Maybe, but one man is not enough." She tilted her head. "One man can start fire." Slowly, a secret bond grew. The women began to trust him, testing him with questions. "Will you break?" One asked. "No," Ethan whispered. "Will you betray us?" Another asked. "Never," he promised. And each time their eyes grew softer, less filled with hate, more filled with something else. Belief. The overseer, however, was not blind. He noticed Ethan's slowness, his silence, his lack of progress. One day, he barked across the chamber. "Human, you are too gentle, too slow. Do you think we do not see?" Ethan bowed his head. "I struggle." The overseer stepped close, his scarred face inches away. "Struggle is weakness. Weakness will be cut from you. Remember this. If you do not plow, we will plow you instead." Ethan said nothing but. His fists clenched behind his back. That night, the green-eyed woman returned. She pressed something small through the bars, a broken shard of metal, sharp on one side. Ethan held it in his palm, staring at her in shock. "This could get you killed." Her voice was firm. "Chains already kill. Better to die fighting." For the first time since he had arrived, Ethan let himself smile fully. Not a smile of joy, but of defiance. "You're right," he whispered. "Better to die fighting." The woman's eyes burned bright. "Then, we fight together." From that night on, Ethan stopped feeling like a prisoner. He was still chained, still watched, still beaten. But inside, he carried a weapon. Not the shard of metal, though that mattered. The real weapon was trust. He was no longer alone. The overseer thought Ethan was bending. The guards thought he was breaking. But in the shadows of the fortress, among whispers and secret glances, a seed was growing. Not a seed of crops. Not a seed of children. A seed of rebellion. And Ethan Cole was ready to plow it into the heart of the empire. The fortress slept, but not fully. Guards paced the towers, their weapons glowing in the dark. The walls hummed with energy, chains rattled faintly in the night air. Inside his cell, Ethan crouched low, the shard of metal hidden in his palm. Green-eyed woman had given it to him 3 nights ago. Since then, he had studied every bolt, every hinge, every lock. Tonight was the night. He pressed the shard against the iron bar of his cell. Sparks hissed as he worked the edge into the lock. His hands shook, not from fear, but from the weight of the moment. If he failed, the guards would kill him. If he succeeded, the whole fortress could burn. A faint click. The lock loosened. Ethan froze, listening. No footsteps, no voices. He pushed slowly, and the bar shifted. The door creaked open. His chest tightened. He was free. In the shadows of the hall, the green-eyed woman waited. Her chains rattled softly as she pressed a finger to her lips. Together, they moved silently, step by step. Other cages lined the hall. Inside, women stirred as they saw Ethan. outside his bars. Their eyes widened with shock, then with hope. He pressed a finger to the lock of one cage, whispering, "Quiet, tonight we run." The women nodded. He worked quickly, using the shard. Locks clicked open one by one. Each freed woman joined silently, their eyes blazing with fury and freedom. Soon, there were 10 of them moving behind Ethan, like shadows slipping through the fortress. A guard turned the corner. His eyes widened. "Escape!" The green-eyed woman struck first. Her chain, still hooked to her wrist, whipped forward and cracked against his throat. He collapsed without a sound. Ethan grabbed the weapon from his hands and passed it to one of the women. The fight had begun. They moved faster now, storming through the hallways. Guards rushed to stop them, but these women were not weak prisoners. They were warriors beaten, chained, but unbroken. Chains became whips. Collars became blades. Their strength was raw, furious. Ethan fought beside them, wielding broken tools and stolen weapons. He swung with the force of years spent in hard labor, striking with precision. Every time a guard fell, another weapon was taken, another prisoner. Armed. Alarms howled through the fortress. Red lights flashed, walls trembling as the gates began to seal. "South Tower!" Ethan shouted. "That's the weakest point, I saw it." They ran, their feet pounding against stone, chains clattering like war drums. The overseer appeared at the top of the stairway, his red armor glowing like fire. His scarred face twisted into rage. "You think you can escape, human?" He roared. "You think these slaves can defy me?" He raised his hand. Chains snapped tight across the women's collars. They screamed, their bodies bending under invisible fire. Ethan's heart pounded. He could not let them break now. He hurled himself forward, tackling the overseer with all his weight. They crashed against the wall, weapons clattering across the floor. The overseer snarled, striking Ethan with a fist like iron. Pain exploded across Ethan's face, but he didn't let go. He grabbed the shard of metal and drove it deep into the overseer's shoulder. The overseer bellowed, the chains flickering weak. The women gasped for air, their strength returning. "Now!" Ethan shouted. Together, they stormed past the overseer. Leaving him bleeding against the wall, they reached the South Tower. The gate hummed with blue energy, a glowing shield blocking the way. Guards poured in from both sides, weapons ready. The golden-skinned woman raised her chained hands. "Together!" She shouted. The women pressed their chains into the shield, their collars sparking with power. The energy crackled, bending under the force of their combined will. Sparks flew, the air screaming with heat. Ethan grabbed a fallen staff and slammed it against the shield. The crack spread wider. "Push!" He roared. The shield shattered in a storm of blue fire. The gate blew open, the night sky rushing in. Freedom was there, just beyond the walls. The group burst into the open land. Twin moons hung above, casting silver light across the barren fields. Behind them, alarms still blared, guards shouting, fires burning, but they were free. For now, the women gasped in the cool night air, their eyes wide, their bodies trembling not with fear, but with power. The green-eyed woman turned to Ethan for the first time. Her lips curved into something close to a smile. "You are human," she whispered. "But tonight, you are ours." Ethan looked back at the fortress, glowing red against the dark sky. He knew this was not the end. The overseer would hunt them. The Empire would not forget. But for the first time since he had signed that cursed contract, he felt alive. They had plowed no fields, but together they had planted something far greater: rebellion. The night was cold, the moons heavy in the sky. The fortress still burned behind them, red flames rising into the darkness. Smoke twisted into the stars like a warning to the Empire. Ethan stood at the edge of the broken gate, breathing hard, his hands cut and bloodied. Around him, the freed women gathered in a circle, their chains still clinging to their wrists and necks. Some leaned on each other, their bodies weak from years of captivity. But their eyes, oh, their eyes were fire. For the first time in this cursed land, they were free. The green-eyed woman stepped forward, her scars glowing under moonlight. She looked at Ethan, her voice low but steady. "The overseer will come, more soldiers. They will hunt us, you know this." Ethan nodded. His jaw was tight, but his eyes did not waver. "Then let them hunt." The golden-skinned woman tilted her head, studying him. "You are human, why fight for us? You could have obeyed, lived, even fed well. Why risk death?" Ethan's laugh was hollow but fierce. "Because I didn't come here to plow slaves. I came here to plow fields. They lied, they tricked me. And now, I'll make them regret it." The women exchanged glances. Some smiled faintly, some clenched their fists. By dawn, they had moved deep into the barren land. They found an abandoned quarry, broken stone walls, hidden caves. It was shelter, at least for a while. Ethan worked beside them, tearing off pieces of chain, turning them into weapons. The shard of metal became a knife. The collars became blades. The women watched him closely. At first, they whispered among themselves, wondering if he was truly different. But as the hours passed, trust grew stronger. Ethan did not sit apart. He did not command them. He worked as one of them. The green-eyed woman finally spoke. "Your empire, your people. Would they fight for us?" Ethan paused. His hands were raw, his face tired, but his voice was steady. "Humans don't like chains. Doesn't matter who wears them. If they knew what's happening here, they'd burn this whole world down." A silence followed. Then, slowly, the women nodded. At midday, shadows appeared on the horizon. Ships, small patrols. The overseer was already searching. Panic flickered in the group, but Ethan raised his voice. "No fear. They think we're weak. They think we'll run. But tonight, we showed them wrong. We're still breathing, and that's enough." He lifted a broken chain like a banner. "We don't bow, not anymore." The women's eyes blazed. They stood taller, even in their chains. By evening, the first patrol reached the quarry. 5 guards stepped off their crawler, weapons humming. They expected slaves. They expected begging. What they found instead was fury. The golden-skinned woman struck first, her chain whipping across a guard's face. Another leapt from the rocks, slamming a stolen blade into a soldier's chest. Ethan fought like a storm, driving his knife into armor joints, kicking weapons away. The fight was brutal, but short. When it ended, 5 guards lay broken on the stones, and the women stood victorious, their chests heaving. Ethan wiped blood from his face, staring at the fallen. "They'll send more, bigger, stronger, but now they know. We're not fields to plow, we're fire to burn." That night, they lit no fire for warmth. Instead, they sat under the twin moons, silent but alive. The green-eyed woman finally spoke again. Her voice was soft, almost gentle. "They will tell stories of this. Of you, human, the one who said no, the one who planted hope." Ethan shook his head. "It's not about me. It's about us, you. Every chain broken, every voice raised. I just gave the first strike." Her lips curved into something rarer. "Smile, small but real. Then we will give the rest." Far in the distance, the fortress burned, its smoke climbing high. Across the colony, whispers would spread. A human had refused. A human had broken chains. A human had turned slaves into fighters. The Empire had wanted him to plow women. Instead, he had plowed the first seeds of rebellion, and rebellion, once planted, never dies. As dawn broke, Ethan stood on the cliff above the quarry. The wind was cold, the land harsh, but the fire inside him was hotter than ever. He looked to the horizon and whispered words that carried into the silence, words the Empire would one day learn to fear. Humans don't plow slaves. Humans plow. Tyrants. The women rose behind him, their eyes blazing, their chains now weapons in their hands. Together, they were no longer prisoners. Together, they were an army. And together, they would change the galaxy.